Okay, so you know that feeling. You think you're doing everything right, supporting the team, things seem okay,
Uh,
and then boom, another resignation email lands in your inbox.
yeah, it's unsettling. Makes you wonder what's really going on underneath.
Exactly. It's not always a full-blown crisis, but it definitely signals something. That's why today we're digging into this resource. Executives compass organizational impact, sustainability, and retention.
Right. And the goal isn't just quick fixes, is it? It's about understanding the why,
Hmm.
the deeper reasons people stay,
Mhm.
or, well, why they leave.
Precisely. Moving beyond just the surface level.
And what I find really compelling about this guidepost is how it frames retention. It says, look, this isn't just an HR metric to track.
No, what is it then?
It's actually a direct reflection of your organizational culture and, crucially, a leadership responsibility.
Ah, okay. So it puts the onus more squarely on leadership and the overall environment.
Absolutely. We're going to explore what it really takes to make people feel, seen, valued, safe, supported, because that's the foundation. When you have that,
Retention kind of takes care of itself, or at least improves significantly.
that's the core idea, yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into that first big anchor, retention as a cultural outcome, not just an HR number.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in, like, turnover rates, exit interviews, tweaking benefits.
The usual suspects, reacting after the fact.
Exactly. But this guidepost argues those are often just symptom management, the root cause.
Right.
That lies deeper in the culture itself.
So how do we get to that root cause then, if not just exit interviews?
Well, the guidepost suggests a shift from being reactive, finding out why someone left after they're gone.
Being proactive.
Yes, proactive, understanding what keeps people engaged while they're still there.
Yep.
They talk about implementing pre-exit check-ins.
Pre-exit check-ins. Okay, tell me more. What does that involve?
It involves asking a really insightful question, they suggest. What would genuinely make you want to stay here?
Oh, wow. That is different. It's forward-looking.
Totally. It shifts the focus from complaints about the past to possibilities for the future. What can we actively do better?
And I imagine the answers aren't always about, schedules or free snacks.
Precisely. The guidepost really emphasizes the emotional climate. Things like psychological safety, workload.
Right. Can people actually voice concerns? Do they feel safe doing that, or are they just constantly swamped?
Exactly, these underlying emotional bits. They often dictate whether someone feels truly connected or if they're just, counting down the days.
It really boils down to feeling like you matter, doesn't it? On a daily basis.
That's the crux of it. When people feel genuinely safe, supported, retention isn't such a battle. It happens more organically because they feel valued beyond just their output.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it flows nicely into the second anchor point you mentioned.
Yeah, integrating well-being right into the leadership ecosystem.
Leadership well-being. Why is that so critical for team retention?
Well, think about it. If your leaders are consistently burnt out, running on empty.
How can they possibly support their teams effectively?
Exactly. It's nearly impossible. And that behavior often gets mirrored, doesn't it?
Yeah. It sets a tone. If the boss is always stressed and overworked, it subtly signals that maybe that's just expected.
Right. It becomes the norm. So the guidepost stresses the link. Leader well-being is directly tied to the team's sustainability and health.
So what can leaders actually do about their own well-being? What does the guidepost suggest?
It gets pretty practical. It talks about leaders needing to intentionally carve out protected time.
Protected time. For what? Like actual breaks?
Yeah, breaks, but also things like coaching, reflection, just time to recharge, not being on 24/7.
Okay. And making well-being a regular topic.
Yes, normalizing those conversations in leadership meetings, making it clear it's a priority, not an afterthought.
And modeling boundaries. Saying no sometimes.
That's a big one. Modeling healthy boundaries. If leaders can respectfully say no when needed, it gives permission for others to do the same.
That modeling piece feels huge because actions speak louder than words, right? If a leader says work-life balance matters, but then emails at 10 p.m.
Exactly. The team sees the reality. The guidepost nails it. Staff learn from leadership's example. So a culture that respects well-being, that's a culture people want to stick around in.
Okay, so we've got culture as the foundation, leadership well-being as crucial. What's a third anchor?
The third one focuses more directly on the employee experience, growth, autonomy, and flexibility.
Right. People need to see a future for themselves, feel like they have some control.
Absolutely. It's about feeling empowered, not just like a cog in the machine. The guidepost gives some great examples of growth pathways.
Beyond just climbing the ladder.
Yeah, it mentions things like clinical advancement tracks, maybe becoming a coach or mentor, cross-training opportunities,
Yeah.
ways to develop skills and feel like you're moving forward.
Broadening the definition of growth. I like that.
And then there's this idea of job crafting.
Job crafting, what's that exactly?
It's basically allowing people some leeway to shape their roles,
Yeah.
to better align the job with their individual strengths and interests, rather than sticking rigidly to a formal description.
Oh, interesting. So more personalized work?
Kind of. It makes the work potentially more engaging, more meaningful for that person.
And how does flexibility tie in? Schedules, remote work.
It mentions building flexible schedules with team input. That collaboration is key. And giving autonomy back, the example used implies healthcare, like autonomy at the bedside, but the principle is broader.
Empowering people to have more control over how and when they do their work, within reason.
Exactly. It builds trust, shows respect for their lives outside of work.
So, connecting all that back to retention, growth fuels engagement, autonomy fuels purpose.
And both make someone significantly less likely to look elsewhere. When you feel you're growing and you have some say in your work, why leave?
Right. It addresses some key drivers of dissatisfaction.
Which brings us to a really crucial, overarching point in the guidepost.
Okay, what's that?
It's this fundamental shift in focus. Stop trying to fix the people who are leaving.
And start fixing the system they're operating within.
You got it. Turnover isn't usually about bad employees. It's often about systemic issues that make it hard for good employees to stay.
So examining the workload, the support structures, the communication, the culture, all those things we've been talking about.
Exactly. The guidepost is basically a call to action. Move from being reactive and applying band-aids.
To being proactive and building strong foundation.
Yes. Moving from like desperation when someone resigns to intentional design of a workplace where people can actually thrive.
Okay. So for you, the listener, maybe feeling some of these pressures, what are the concrete takeaways? What can you do?
Well, the guidepost gives a very direct action item. It suggests gathering your team.
Okay. And asking them.
Asking them 3 specific, pretty powerful questions. First, what's one key reason people genuinely stay here?
Okay. Focus on the positive first.
Then, what's one significant reason people ultimately leave?
The flip side, get honest feedback.
And the third one is crucial. What do we need to change before the next person resigns?
Wow. That puts the urgency right there before the next one.
It really does. It forces you to think preventatively.
And what do you do with the answers?
The next step, the guidepost says, is vital. Create a simple, staff-driven action plan based directly on that feedback.
Staff-driven, okay, not just leadership dictating.
Right. Make it practical, owned by the team. And importantly, revisit it quarterly. Keep it alive, check progress.
Quarterly check-ins on the plan. Got it. That keeps the momentum.
Definitely. And beyond that team action, there are also prompts for personal reflection for you, the leader.
Ah, the journal prompts. Good for deeper thinking.
Exactly. The first one asks, what signals, maybe subtle ones, do you see that someone on your team might be disengaging?
Tuning into those early warnings. Good.
The second one is introspective.
Yeah.
How sustainable is your own leadership workload right now?
Oof. Turning the mirror on yourself. We talked about how important that is.
We did. And the last prompt. What is one system-level change that could improve well-being or retention in the next 90 days?
Thinking bigger picture. System change, not just individual tweaks. And with a time frame.
Yeah, pushing for practical, strategic action.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. We've gone through the executive's compass on sustainability and retention. What are the absolute core messages we want people to walk away with?
I think the biggest one is that retention isn't just an HR number. It's truly an outcome of your culture.
A reflection of whether people feel valued, safe, supported day to day.
Exactly. And leadership well-being isn't a nice to have. It's foundational. It sets the tone.
Right. Leaders need to be well to lead well.
And then providing those clear pathways for growth, giving people real autonomy, offering flexibility. Those aren't just perks. They're essential ingredients.
For keeping people engaged and wanting to stay.
Yeah. And the overall shift. Fix the system, not the people. Move from reaction to intentional design.
Excellent summary. And this guidepost, it's the final piece of the organizational impact pillar in the executive's compass.
That's right. It ties together a lot of these themes about creating a healthier, more sustainable organization.
So if you're listening and thinking, okay, I get the concepts, but how do I really build this culture? There are more resources.
Absolutely. For digging even deeper into sustainable leadership and designing cultures that keep people, there's a companion episode of the Let's Talk About It podcast.
Which one is that?
It's titled Sustainability and Retention Strategies,
Hmm.
Designing Cultures That Keep People. It gets into more specifics, more practical strategies.
Great recommendation. And I hear there's another relevant Let's Talk About It episode coming up soon, too.
Yeah, the next one is focusing on advocacy and organizational influence.
Ah, so that would be useful for leaders trying to champion these kinds of changes across the wider organization, building support.
Exactly. Driving that broader change often requires influencing skills and building coalitions. So that should be really helpful.
Perfect. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe one final thought for our listener to reflect on.
Sure. Thinking about everything we've discussed,
Hmm.
consider this. What is one immediate, maybe even small change you could make now? Something based on these insights that would signal clearly to your team, your well-being matters, and we value your future here.
Just one small thing to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the power of starting small. Sometimes those little signals create the biggest ripples when it comes to building trust and improving retention.